Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Today I am repurposing an episode from my lovely friend Kat Horrocks's podcast, Put Yourself First, because it was just too good not to share with you and make sure that I got this information in your ears. I was interviewed by her in September of last year, and I really wanted to share this because it's a really nice recap on my health journey, how I managed to heal. We talked about foundational things when you're healing, so things like stress and sleep, the absolute foundations that you can't overlook. She wanted to know the top tips for gut and hormone health, and I shared one thing that you're probably not eating enough of. Also, the gut stress nervous system connection and how it's such a two-way street, how the gut influences the brain and vice versa, because her episode is very like mindset focused and she doesn't really cover like the physical body too much. So that's why she had me on as like the resident nutritionist, and we got back to basics. So if you want to learn about the gut hormone connection, the gut brain connection, all that good stuff, then this is going to be a really great episode for you. And definitely check out Kat's work. I'll link everything in the show notes. But yeah, let's get into the episode.
So, hi everyone, welcome back to the Put Yourself First podcast, and welcome to my friend and like long time coming guest, but also like first guest in ages. So, like very exciting to be having a conversation with someone rather than just chatting to myself for a change. It's Vivian, my lovely friend, amazing health coach, and yeah, we're gonna have some. Like I feel like so many women listening are going to find this conversation such a permission slip, so validating, so helpful. So thank you for being
Thank
here.
you. I feel honoured. And we're doing a little podcast swap. So we're back to back recording today. You're going to be on my show. And yeah, I just feel like I think we found each other through Monica Yates's work initially. And
Yeah,
then I realized I was like, oh, she's a fellow Northern gal, because there's people from like all over the world on that. So it's like, I feel like I like her vibe. I like what she's into. And then I just carried on following you. I was like, oh, you live down the road, like 30 minutes away. This is perfect.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, I know. I always love connecting with a fellow Northern gal, and I think when we reconnected earlier this year, we just ended up like, I feel like I was watching your stories, you were watching mine, and we just kept replying to each other, and we
Yeah.
were just like, should we go have a lunch?
Yeah.
And I loved that as well, because I said to Adam, I was like, I don't feel like I've made a new friend in years, and I feel like I've just made a new friend and I'm meeting her.
Aw,
And she
that's so
lives
cute. I do feel like it's harder when I don't know if you agree, like when you get
yeah.
older, it was so much easier at school, but I've lost touch with most of those friends. So
Mm,
it's a bit more challenging to make friends when you're an adult. But
yeah,
sometimes you have to just like, do you want to be my friend? Do you want to come for a coffee?
totally. I feel like I went through an intense period of like actively, right, I will have more friends when I was probably in my early 20s, like between 22 to 25 maybe. And and then I got to this place where I had these like beautiful, like really close, tight-knit friends, and almost like went the other way where I was like, oh, I'm good now. And
No
I
more.
can be a bit of not a hermit, but I can be a bit lazy with like networking or
Yeah,
like
I feel like I'm the same.
socializing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that I found you.
Yeah, me too. So I would love you to share a bit more about your health journey, because I think it's easy, isn't it, to see someone who is a health coach and who is like absolutely thriving in their health and like has glowing skin and talks about all these cool like health like I love when I came around to your house last week, you were like chatting to me about coffee enemas and like all these health hack
Obviously.
things. Yeah, like all
As
these
soon as you walk through the door, like, okay,
yeah,
Kat, sit
yeah,
down.
yeah. But I think it's easy to see you now and think you've always been like that, and you've always been a healthy person and had all these tips and known exactly what was happening in your body and been able to support yourself, and that's obviously not been the case for you.
Gonna be further from the truth.
So I think giving everyone a background on where you've come from with your own health is probably a great place to start.
Do you want the long version or the edited down?
I want whatever version you want to share today.
Okay. Because there's some parts I don't think it's like 100% relevant, and I don't want to like talk about these more in-depth things because some people's minds will be like, do I need to listen to that? So this is just my journey, and what worked for me isn't gonna work for everyone. But yeah, I struggle with a lot of hormone problems. But then I later found out, and I'll kind of bring this full circle, that the hormone symptoms and the conditions that I was diagnosed with, like acne or hair loss, like this special name, telogen effluvium. It was basically my hair was falling out because my body was so stressed and inflamed. And I was diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is on the rise, not just from better diagnosis either. I feel like that's a bit of a myth. I feel like it is becoming more rampant as most chronic health issues. But I eventually found out that all of those things are still symptoms of a deeper problem. I thought when I got those diagnoses that I'd got the answer. I was like, oh, I have PCOS. That makes sense. That's why I do have the acne and the hair loss, and I'm sprouting like chin hairs every other day. And it was actually because of much deeper problems. So I thought I got the answers, but I'd had to do a lot more work and a lot more digging to discover what they were. So I always say that I was pretty healthy as a kid, but looking back now, there were definitely some issues. Like I was prone to nosebleeds quite a lot. I would have a lot of travel sickness and vomiting. But in terms of food sensitivities and allergies and all of that, I was completely fine. I could eat anything and everything that I wanted to. And I didn't have the worst diet ever, but as I got older, as I got into like school years, I would frequently try to like sneak on the bus just to save the 50p at the time, what it was, just to get some like crisps after school, or buy like a Lucozade the next day. So I just got a bit more unhealthy, and I was doing like less sports when I left school, and it did result in me just having less like muscle mass, and I just had extra body fat at the time. But I definitely wasn't overweight like I thought I was. I found a picture a few years ago of, it was the picture that I saw of myself, where in the moment I was like, that is disgusting. I need to lose weight. And it's a picture of like so happy on the beach in Florida with my brother. And looking at it now, there was nothing at all wrong with me. I was completely healthy body weight, but my teenage brain was like, no, I cannot look like that. I need to start going to the gym. So that's what I did. I started going to the gym, and I have a bit of a like obsessive personality. So when I get into something, I will like do it all day, every day. So I started going to the gym every single day, back to back classes, like body pump and abs and cardio and boxing, fit, all of that. And I also started to try and eat healthy. I wasn't trying to intentionally undereat, but the foods that I was eating just were very low calorie and very low protein and zero fats. All of these like snack crisp, like 100-calorie snack packs. And to fuel myself after the gym, I'd have a chicken salad with just iceberg lettuce and plain chicken, and think that was enough. So I ended up losing my period, and I was about 18 at this point, 17, 18. And up until that, I'd had a completely regular, pain-free, like zero problem period from the age of about 14. So that did set some alarm bells ringing. And it was my mum, actually. She was more concerned about that problem. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. I don't have a period. And I knew that my body was trying to tell me something, but I was just so focused on the gym. I was getting so many more compliments, people saying I look so good. I was losing weight. But on the inside, I was an anxious mess. I started to develop skin issues. I lost my period. My hair started falling out. So for me, those other things were the things that I was focused on, like the hair loss, the fact that my completely clear skin all throughout school started to break out. That was the thing that motivated me to go to the doctor, not the period stuff. But they diagnosed me with PCOS without asking any questions as to what had changed recently, like why did this happen? PCOS doesn't run in my family. I'd had hardly any doctor's visits up until that point. So if they would have just asked me like what has changed, how much are you exercising, have you completely changed your diet recently, maybe I could have realized then that that was the problem. But I just thought I had the genetics this whole time, and I just developed it. randomly. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together at the time. I didn't think that what I was doing was causing it. And actually the advice that they typically give for PCOS is to do that, is to exercise more and eat less. So if I would have followed the mainstream advice, that was the complete opposite advice that I needed. So I didn't do that because I was hardly eating anything at the time. But the solution was to wait and see what happened, which I wasn't going to do because I was just feeling worse and worse every month. Or option number 2 was to go on the birth control pill. So I ended up choosing that one. I did actually feel at the time like it was pretty trendy to be on the pill, which sounds very stupid now, but it's like, oh, I'm going on the pill. Like, all of my friends are on it, and I feel like a proper woman. Like, I'm on this medication, these hormones. But that first pill like completely messed me up in a couple of weeks. I had really bad depression from it. My skin was worse. My hair loss was worse. Everything was just amplified. And I was trying to persevere and push through it because I was like, no, this is gonna fix me. This is fine. I just was not listening to my body. But again, my mum, the woman who knows everything still, she was like, you need to come off this pill. This isn't you. You've gotten worse. So she forced me to go back to the doctor and change the pill. And I just went on a different type. And this one was more expensive for them. So it wasn't the typical one that they would prescribe. But it was like a newer form, and the brand name was Yasmin, and there's another one like Yaz. Now I think it's been like discontinued because it's got black box warnings and tons of lawsuits, been linked to blood clots. I actually had I think I had a blood clot when I was on it. I had like a scare when I was abroad, and I had this severe leg pain, and my leg swelled up, and I had really bad cramps. No, I know that that's a sign of a blood clot, and with the pill that I was on at the same time, but sometimes that can travel into the pulmonary system, into the lungs, and kill you. So that's what a lot of people died from. So I don't know what happened with myself, but that obviously that wasn't the case. But yeah, just really scary. And I was only on that second pill for 2 years, and my health started to decline in other ways. At that point, my skin was clear. It cleared up the breakouts. My quote period, but it's not a period when you're on the pill. It's just a bleed. I was having a regular bleed, and my hair loss, it stopped falling out, but it just never grew. The whole time that I was on the pill, I think I had in 2 years like 2 haircuts. I hardly ever had to shave my legs. I didn't have to pluck my eyebrows. My hair just didn't grow properly. And I again thought I'd rather it be like that than falling out. But I think other things just started to happen, like more anxiety, more food sensitivities, and I just didn't feel like myself anymore. And then I went to America when I was 19. So I thought everything was fine then. My main problems had stopped, but I continued with the excessive exercise and the dieting. Went to America when I was 19, working at a summer camp. And for that whole, was it like 7 or 9 weeks that I was there, I was trying to be healthy at the camp, which is pretty much impossible. All they feed you is pizza and chicken wings and pasta and all of this junk. And I was trying to eat healthy. So I would just have like oatmeal in the morning, and I just have like a little bit of meat and chicken and some salad, maybe a potato every now and again. And I just was doing even more activity because I was over there being an aerobics and yoga instructor. And I was in the intense heat, the summer heat in Pennsylvania, and it was just really bad. And it was the recipe for adrenal problems and more hormone problems. And then when I got home, on that trip as well, I got like severe food poisoning a couple of times. I'm pretty sure I was bitten by a tick on that trip, and later found out that I had Lyme disease after testing my own body, because that would have never been picked up by the doctors either. So when I got home, that's when shit hit the fan, and my health just declined rapidly. I was reacting to every food, couldn't even drink water without bloating up. And I was still trying to eat healthy foods. It wasn't like I wanted to eat McDonald's or junk food. Just vegetables, herbs and spices, fruit would bloat me up. And I'd have things like hives, migraines, chronic fatigue. The skin issues started back up again. And that's when I was like, something is seriously wrong. I went to see a nutritionist myself who works in Manchester. and she started to like open my eyes to this whole other world of natural medicine and healing and functional medicine and lab tests to see what's going on. And she taught me about the harmful effects of the birth control pill and how that was just masking everything. So with her support, I ended up transitioning off that. My period didn't return for 2 years after that because of how many deficiencies I had and just how disconnected my brain and hormone system was. And I did lots of testing, found out my thyroid was off, I had severe nutrient deficiencies, I had bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth in my gut, I had 2 parasites that came back on lab tests. And I worked with her for a little bit and it definitely helped. And I ended up studying. She was the college director at the time. And I ended up studying at the College of Naturopathic Medicine because I was just obsessed with that. At that point, I was like, this is giving me hope. I really feel like it just made complete sense to me when I looked at it, how food can heal you and how there's always answers, there's always a root cause. I was just getting nowhere with the conventional system. I would go with these severe digestive pains and I was losing weight rapidly at that point. I wasn't doing the dieting when I started to learn about food healing you and all of that, but I was losing weight then because my gut was just so messed up that I wasn't absorbing my food anymore. And I went to the gastroenterologists and they were just so bad. Like I didn't even get any eye contact from them. They were just sat at the desk, backs turned to you. You get 5 minutes with them. He was calling me the wrong name the whole time. And I told him how worried I was about my weight and how I couldn't put on weight no matter how much I was eating. And he did my BMI, which I think is another flawed system. And he was like, oh, your BMI is 18.5. You need to be less than an 18 to be considered underweight. I was like, well, I'm 5'11" and I'm about 2 stone lighter than I have been my whole life. This is a problem for me. I don't care what your chart said, but he wasn't willing to give me any help. He would do a little feel around on my abdomen and he was like, can you stop breathing in? And I wasn't. It was just literally my ribs with her. And I told him at the time, I was like, I've been researching. I went in with a whole file of articles and research papers and books that I've been told to read. And I was like, I really feel like I have this bacterial overgrowth in my gut. And I've done this private stool test and spent hundreds of pounds myself. And this stool test is showing bacterial overgrowth. Could I be referred for antibiotics? Because that is actually one of the treatments. It's just quick and effective to get rid of it. And he said, everyone has bacteria in the gut. That's completely normal. And I was like, yes, but it's overgrown. They're like the bad types of bacteria and it's in the wrong part of the gut. So I just knew I wasn't getting anywhere and it was actually making me even more upset. I would come out of every appointment in tears, just so angry. And so for a long time, I just swung the other way and I was just completely against the medical system. And I was like, I've had such a bad experience. And I was so very pro like herbal medicine and getting your answers in that. I have calmed down now and I've found a middle place because I've realized there's a time and a place for the surgical interventions, obviously, and the NHS is amazing for what we get, but it's also it's failing and it's being abused a lot of the time. And it isn't being used how it should be. It should be there for accidents, emergencies, life-saving treatments, but not these chronic lifestyle-driven conditions. And a lot of those can be prevented or even reversed with natural nutrition and all of that. So then I had been studying, so I studied for 3 years and the course was naturopathic nutrition. I learned so much on that too. I worked with other practitioners here and there, but I found that my own research was helping me more than what anyone else was saying because I was listening to my body, I was listening to myself, and I'd work with someone for a little bit and find that I'd get to this like block and I just needed to go to the next level. So I'd just go deeper and deeper. For the first few years, I was just managing my symptoms very well. So I started to do these special diets and it would help my skin or it would help my bloating. But as soon as I'd stray from that, my symptoms would come back. So I was like, this isn't normal. I'm spending £300 a month on supplements and I'm feeling better. I know that it's working, but I feel like it's like a band-aid at the moment. It's just keeping things simmering. So if I was to stay up late one night or have a glass of like gin and tonic, my symptoms would come back. So it's like, this isn't normal. I'm not healed. I'm just doing really good at managing things right now. So it wasn't until 2019, so I was about 24 or 5 at the time, when I was just getting like sick of it, honestly, because I'd been having health issues for about 5 years then. And I was like, something deeper must be going on still. So I was just online, Googling, searching like I used to do all the time. And I started hearing over and over again about toxic mold exposure. I was like, because it was telling me that these allergic reactions and sensitivities that I was having to all of these foods could be as a result of toxic mold in my home. This was when I was living at home with my family, and it's like a very old house, built in the Victorian times, or like 1800s or something it was built. And there was no visible signs of mold, but I just felt something inside, again, just tapping in to my intuition. I was like, something kind of makes sense. I'm going to look into this further. And about 3 times that week, I heard people talk about mold, whereas before that, I'd never, maybe my reticular activating system wasn't switched onto it, but that week, and this has happened with like different books or podcasts or even things like the Yes Apply certification, which we've both done, like 3 people in the same week mentioned it. So I was like, I have to look into that. So the same thing happened with mold. I ended up going to a conference that talked a lot about toxic mold exposure and the health effects. As part of that training, we got a test to test our bodies, and that test came back off the charts, through the roof, with so many of these like harmful mycotoxins, which are mold toxins. So then I was already moving anyway, so I was moving out into my first apartment I was meant to be early 2020, but then it got delayed to summer because of COVID and everything. And then it wasn't until I moved and I got out of that environment and I really started to work on detoxing that my health issues started to fully improve, and not like just managing it really well. Like my body was truly healed and healthy at the cellular level. But it's about 3 years later now, and I'd say I'm 95% better with my symptoms, but with how sick I was, I do think it's normal for it to take time, and that's a pretty realistic timeline for someone if they're struggling with like more complex cases like myself. So when I said at the start that some of these more complex things like the Lyme disease, the mold toxicity, that would not be something that you would jump into straight away. You would always do the foundational things like I did. So some people with skin issues, all they need to do is drink more water, eat more fiber, and they're good. They just need to cut out the junk food. But the women that I work with, the people that I help now, that isn't them. They're already doing everything right. And I want them to just know that there are other things that they can look into if they've done all those foundational things like the sleep, the stress management, they're moving their body, they're avoiding as many toxins as possible in their home. They're not using like toxic cleaning chemicals. If you've done all that and you're still sick, there are answers. But if you're listening to this and you're pretty new to the health and nutrition world, you would start with a lot of the basic stuff, which I can go more into today. But that's why I was saying my hormone problems, at first, I was just doing things like seed cycling, or I was doing herbal medicine like Vitex, or I was doing things to drop my testosterone, my androgens, my male hormones that could be linked to PCOS. I was doing things to push that down. I was doing things to boost up my progesterone, but my own body should be able to have done that. I shouldn't need to interfere and kind of manipulate my body. It should just be naturally healthy. And I do think we need like a couple of supplements anyway to keep us healthy because of food like deficiency in the soil and stress. I think we all need like 1 or 2 things, but the amount of products I was taking, and I was still severely nutrient deficient, and it's because I had to do all of this work on my gut. So yeah, I qualified from college in 2017. I've been practicing ever since. Started out my practice helping mainly just period problems, women's health, and then because of my own complexities, it's gone a little bit deeper. So I do help people with chronic fatigue and chronic skin issues now, infertility, chronic pain, all of that. So it's kind of diversified a little bit more. But yeah, I feel like my journey put me on my path, and as hard as it was in those years, I don't regret it, and I learned so much. And before all of this, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew that I wanted to help people. I studied health and social care at college. I loved, like, at home being like the nurse when people were sick and going around and helping them, but I wouldn't have known about all of this. I didn't even know this was a job that I have. I thought there was a dietitian and they just help people with diabetes in hospitals. But it's, yeah, honestly, like, my passion now, and I just love spreading this knowledge with people and giving people hope if they are struggling with hormone problems or more complex situations.
Yeah.
That was the long version.
Thank you for the long version. I really enjoyed it. Because I've obviously, we've chatted quite a bit this year, and like I've listened to your podcast and stuff, but I think it's really helpful to hear snippets, and so much of that, so much of the snippets in there I know are going to resonate with women listening, especially what you were saying around, the healthcare system having a time and a place, and how we are taught that it's like a pill for every ill. So we are conditioned in society to think, right, something is wrong, I need to make it not be wrong again. Like I need to make it go away.
Yeah, and we think of
versus
the doctors as being like these gods and they have all the answers.
Yeah.
And if they can't help me, then I'm just screwed. I'm just going to have to live with this. Or their word is gospel. But they're taught in a specific way. They're taught to give you a diagnosis and then give you a medication for that diagnosis. So whenever I brought up diet, I'd ask them directly. I'd ask dermatologists and gastroenterologists, so skin and gut specialists. I notice a difference when I eat dairy products, or I notice when I eat a takeaway, I feel worse. And they're like, they literally said there is no connection between your skin and your diet, or your digestive issues and your diet. I was like, how does that even logically make sense? I would know as a kid, like when I eat something bad, my stomach hurts. So for them to say that, I just think if they were just honest and said, like, we don't know, we recommend you look into this yourself. But the fact that they can be so against it and completely shut you down for you asking and just searching for answers, I think that's the problem. When I mention things like homeopathy, they just completely close their ears because they've been taught that is just like witchcraft and it's just a load of rubbish, it's quackery, it doesn't work, and people are just conning you, when in fact homeopathy has helped me a million times more than like true medications have.
Yeah. And it's also like, well, why does your stomach hurt every time you eat dairy? Because
fixing that problem,
like, it's like the same with gluten. I feel like gluten and dairy again are so like demonized in health, like where it becomes trendy to, like, it's trendy to be vegan, it's trendy to then be, everyone's now having oat milk, everyone's now doing whatever. But if something is genuinely causing you a problem, what I love about your approach is you're like, but why is it causing you a problem? Because it's one thing to be like celiac and like, oh, your body genuinely does not process gluten and you just genuinely feel better without it. But it's another that like, is it normal to have such severe reaction to something when seemingly you're not celiac, or seemingly, there's not an allergy there? And so there's something underneath that, like there's a reason that's happening, rather than just like, I guess the health and wellness version of a pill for every ill is like, oh, well, just don't eat that and then magically like your life will be better. And I just think we're sold either side of the equation, like this extreme lifestyle change. And what I love about what you share as well, and I've heard you say it on Instagram, is you should not get to a point where you're like scared to eat and you've got like you've got like a list of foods that you can eat that are like safe foods that aren't gonna make you bloated or like, you know, fuck up your period or whatever is happening, you know, make you break out. There is like that happy medium in the middle, but unless we're asking the right questions, we're not going to discover that. And people aren't empowered to ask the right questions. And even when they ask the right questions, like in your example, they're not given the fucking answer by the people who are supposed to be helping them with that.
Yeah. And it's such a slippery slope as well when you start cutting out the foods.
Yeah.
I think for acne and digestive issues, they're the biggest ones, because you might be reacting badly to dairy, and you might get more bloating when you've had gluten. And there is a time and a place for an elimination diet. So if you are reacting, sometimes we do have to cut it out temporarily, but it should always be with the goal of trying to reintroduce it back in, because a healthy body should be able to tolerate a wide variety of foods. If you think, like, imagine what would have been eating hundreds of years ago. We would have been like scavengers at one point, just getting our hands on whatever we can. We wouldn't have been like, oh, I can't eat that. Like, I can only eat a small serving, or I can only eat that every other day, because we would have had to have a tolerance. We couldn't have been that sensitive to get to where we are today in humanity. But there is definitely a case for food sensitivities, and it's not black and white what doctors believe. You either have a gluten intolerance and you can never eat it again, and you have celiac or an allergy, or you're completely fine and you can eat it whenever you want. There is this big grey area in the middle, and sometimes you do need, like, I had to cut out gluten from my diet because I do notice a reaction. But previously, when I would have eaten a small amount, I would have had joint pain. Like my fingers would have swollen a little bit, so I couldn't get my rings on. I just had like knuckle pain, my knees would hurt, I would have anxiety the next day. So it doesn't always have to be the typical symptoms we think of either. Like, you don't have to have diarrhea immediately after having gluten. You can have 2 days later a bit more anxiety or low mood or joint pain, or that month, if you've eaten a lot of gluten, your period could be really painful. So it can be a delayed response. So that's why it can be a bit more tricky to identify. But in those cases, I would still remove it from the gut, remove it from the diet whilst working on the gut health. So making sure that when we do enter it back into the body, it's in a different environment. Because if you just cut the food out and then just bring it back in to the exact same digestive tract when you've not done any work, you're still going to have that same reaction. It's like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So if you cut it out, it does allow the gut lining to start to heal a little bit, and you can get rid of food sensitivities. Food allergies are slightly different. So these are the ones that are IgE reactions. Most people have had them since childhood, or they're very obvious. You have the throat swelling and the hives all over your face and the vomiting and severe pains. Whereas an intolerance or sensitivity, this is a less severe, can be delayed reaction, and it can manifest as skin issues, itchy skin, headaches, migraines, up to sometimes 5 days later after eating that food. So in that case, you would work on the underlying immune system problem, because it's the immune system and the gut that's reacting to the food, whilst removing it, give it a few months, and slowly bring it back into the gut. And there are just some foods that people do feel better off. So I don't have a gluten allergy, but I do feel better not eating it on a regular basis. But now when I have a little bit, I feel absolutely fine. I don't have any obvious reactions, but it's still not something that I would eat on a regular basis, because I know that if I do start bringing it back in, combined with other stressors, so if I'm going through a stressful time, or my hormones are a little bit off, then that extra gluten is just not going to be helpful to my body. So I just choose to keep it out, just to stress my body a little bit less. So it's like a bit of a balancing act. Like when I was in Madeira, I went on like a hike, and there was a woman in the little cafe, this Portuguese woman, and she was like offering everyone cookies. She didn't speak a word of English, and I had the cookie and I felt fine, and I wasn't going to panic and beat myself up or refuse if I didn't have like an actual problem with it. And yeah, it was fine. But if I would have got into that thinking, what have I done? I shouldn't eat this. I'm going to feel so bad later. I probably would have done, because I would have just brought that on because of mental stress. You can definitely send yourself into a reaction, but you can also do the same. You can also go into that mindfully with gratitude and positive energy, and really savor that cookie and enjoy yourself, and tell yourself when you're eating it, my body accepts this food, my body knows what to do, my body is resilient, my body is healthy. So I do a lot now with like mindset work around food fears, because that was me. At one stage I was down to about 10 foods, and I'd never been as ill in the whole journey. I was doing the food elimination to try and find triggers, but I just found that I was reacting to everything. So the answer isn't just to cut every food out of my diet, it was to I wasn't looking deep enough at the time. For me, it was the mold and Lyme disease, even things like parasites, that were driving my severe reactions. But me just cutting out food group after food group left me with about 10 safe food for years and years. I couldn't eat out. I couldn't have any spices on anything, so it's just like plain chicken, plain swede was one of the foods. Like, I don't even look at a swede anymore because I'm like, I'm not eating one of those ever again. I have like PTSD from Swedes. So yeah, for me, it was the more that I restricted, the more fearful I became. I wasn't fixing the underlying causes, and I was just running into more nutrient deficiencies, and I was making my body weaker and weaker because I just wasn't getting all of the nutrition and the diversity that I needed. So if I can help anyone today, it would be to clean up your diet and obviously cut out the junk food and the processed food. But if you are struggling with your skin or your periods or your bloating, you want to be mindful of what you're eating. If you eat something and you have severe stomach cramps and spasms, or you have like a face full of breakouts the next day, and you can directly correlate it with that, and you've tried it multiple times and you know for definite it is that food that's causing an issue, then that's fine. You can temporarily eliminate it. But if you're getting to the point where you're just guessing and you're not sure and you don't have like clear evidence that it's a problem, it is probably best to keep it in and get further help, so that you don't have to keep like narrowing down your diet, because it just makes it so much harder even to introduce the food back in. If you keep cutting stuff out, it makes it more difficult for your body to accept that food again, because it just becomes like hyper vigilant, and it sees everything as a threat, everything as dangerous, and you're eventually going to start to become intolerant to those foods that you've narrowed yourself down to. So if you haven't fixed that inflammation, that leaky gut, that fire, that problem, then your body's just going to start to react to those foods, and that's really can be quite challenging, very depressing when you're in it, because I was such a foodie as well, and I didn't even want to eat like the junk food. I didn't care about that. I just wanted to eat fruits and vegetables, and I wanted to put some spice or olive oil on my food, and I was having reactions to the food at that point. Some of it was, I think, psychological and just become this like food anxiety, but I was actually having reactions to the food as well. So at that stage, sometimes people need to go into brain rewiring work and really focus on that, to be able to tolerate foods and diversify their diet. And then I feel like it becomes like a snowball effect. The more that you diversify and realize that you survived, nothing bad happened, you find evidence that you can do it, it's a bit more easy to keep going with that. But it can also go the other way, like a slippery slope, when you're just desperate to heal and you just feel like food is the enemy, when in fact food can be so healing and like beneficial to us, obviously.
Yeah. Can we talk about, I'd love you to share a bit more about like gut health, stress, and the nervous system, and like how it's linked, because I work a lot with stress and like trauma and the nervous system in my work, like the mind-body connection. And I think and there's such a link between like the how you feel in yourself and your health. And I just find it fascinating how your gut and your gut health is so heavily linked to like stress in your lifestyle, and how that is a slippery slope, and probably the answer to most people's questions around like, why is everyone all of a sudden like struggling with all these things, when the reality is not, the majority of the women that I work with are dealing with stress in some form, and like almost this, I describe it as like living in survival mode, where their nervous system, their body is in a constant state of like fight or flight. Talk to us about why stress and that survival mode could also be like linked to poor gut health, and how that like knock-on effects then happens with especially hormones, which we'll chat about next as well.
Yeah, so there's this two-way street. It works both ways. So when your mental stress is off, or you have a history of trauma, or you have these limiting beliefs, or you have this fast-paced go lifestyle, then that can affect the gut. So it causes things like your peristalsis, your gut motility, to slow down. The stress can directly lower the amount of good bacteria that you have, which is your defense system. So protecting you against things like viruses, parasites, bacteria, that goes down. And the bad guys, the opportunistic bad bacteria, yeast overgrowth, fungus in our body, which we all have naturally, but they can start to proliferate. They start to overgrow when we're in this more stress depleted state. So we end up with more bad gut bugs, less good gut bugs. Our motility gets messed up, so our food isn't moving through our gut properly, which can obviously result in constipation, but also diarrhea. That can be like loose stools. You can still have motility issues with that, because some parts of the gut, it's going really slow, and then the last part, it just goes really quick. So yeah, don't think you don't have issues with motility, just if you have loose stools.
Thinking of like stressed out people as well, if they're also relying on caffeine to like get through the day, they might need the caffeine.
Just gonna amp things up even more
in order to go.
And if you do rely on your morning coffee to have a bowel movement, then you've probably got a problem. Like, you shouldn't have to use something like that to have a bowel movement. So yeah, just maybe do a little experiment and see what goes on, because some people it's just become this daily thing and they don't even think what they're doing. So yeah, our brain can affect our gut, and that's why we get like the butterflies in our stomach when we're nervous. That's a classic example of how the brain affects the gut, but it also works the other way around. So when we have imbalances in our gut, like the bad bacteria, the yeast overgrowth, parasite infections, low stomach acid, leaky gut, that sends inflammatory signals and messages to the brain. So they've even shown this in research now, that depression isn't due to low serotonin levels. And that's why antidepressants, they aren't actually effective. They are no more effective than placebo. So I am happy that people have found success with them and maybe in their life. And some people, it saves their life, but how much of that is a placebo effect? Or they have been shown to have more of an anti-inflammatory effect. That can be sometimes how they're beneficial in the system. So it's more depression, anxiety, mental health problems, even things like OCD and phobias, even just phobias that just don't make sense. They can be due to inflammation in the brain, which can stem from the gut. This is why just talk therapy, or just trying to mentally understand your problems, often isn't enough. And we have to look at what's going on in the gut. So even when we were developing in utero, our gut and our brain came from the same tissue. So they started as one, and then they just separated, and they stay connected via the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is, I think it's the longest nerve, or maybe the sciatic nerve. I think it's one of the longest nerves in the body, but it stays connected, so that our gut and our brain have this like bi-directional relationship. So we were talking before, I think we hit record, on how sometimes with my clients, I am helping them, like they've done therapy for 10 years, they understand why they behave in certain ways, or they understand the trauma that they've been through, but they can't seem to have these breakthroughs, and they can't seem to get to the next level. There's something still affecting their health. So when we go in on the physical body level and we start to improve that, they finally, in their therapy sessions, have this huge revelation, and they can finally release this emotion that's been holding them back, because you have to be able to physically detox to emotionally detox. But then it works the other way, where I have some clients who they'll do anything that I say. They will take every supplement, they will do the diet to a T, they will follow every recommendation, but they're still struggling. And it's because they're not addressing the mental stress, emotional part. So it depends on where you're at, and most people, they're going to have a combination of both. Any symptom you're dealing with, whether it's a migraine or it's pain or it's depression, there's always a physical component, and I always believe there's an energetic, emotional stress component as well, whether it's like a small symptom or something as complex and big as cancer or Alzheimer's, something like that. So there's always like an energetic component as well. So our gut is where a lot of our nervous system tissue is based. So we can't isolate things out. And the gut is literally center of our body physically, but it's also the center of our health, like the epicenter of everything. So if there's a old Hippocrates quote, who's like the father of modern medicine, he said all disease begins in the gut. But we can go a step deeper, and like it all begins in the nervous system. Because also you can't heal your gut if your nervous system's off. You can't heal your gut if you're still stressed out, if you're still holding on to this trauma. You can make improvements, but for the true healing, something like chronic IBS could be you not feeling safe or not feeling secure. This whole like solar plexus center, it's all about safety. So people who move around a lot or have a job that they don't feel set and secure in, or like they were bullied as a child, they don't have a strong family community, then they can struggle with IBS. So like I can do all of the gut healing in the world, but unless you heal that wound, that root, you're still going to be struggling. Yeah. So yeah, there's many different connections and things with hormone health. It can come back to gut health in so many different ways, but take something like PCOS again, polycystic ovarian syndrome. The causes of that are blood sugar irregularities. So with blood sugar, we should be on this nice like up and down throughout the day, goes up a little bit after we've eaten, comes down after we've eaten. This can actually be applied to any hormone problem, something like endometriosis or PMS. So not just PCOS actually, but we should be on this nice like fluid, like little wave throughout the day with blood sugar. When we have gut problems, so when we have bacterial overgrowth, this term's called dysbiosis. So basically too many bad guys, not enough good guys. The ecosystem's just a little bit off. Imagine this rainforest in the gut, or this garden, there's too many weeds, not enough nice plants and flowers. So when we have that problem with too many bad guys, they can cause inflammation in our body, and they can cause a lot of stress. And people think of stress as just work stress, financial stress, relationship stress, but there's this huge umbrella term with stress, and it can be structural. So if you have imbalances with your spine because your posture's really bad and your head's like overhanging, that causes a lot of stress on the nervous system. Like I've realized after going to a chiropractor, I had a lot of imbalances in my neck, and I was making it worse with my job because I realized when I was watching my Zoom videos back, my head was like right up front of the screen. I was like, oh God. So I tried to remind myself to like sit back and make sure my neck's not facing forward. When you're eating, you want to make sure that your posture's nice, so you're not like slumped over, you can let your food move through. But yeah, stress can be structural. It can be unstable blood sugar. If your blood sugar's up, spiking, crashing all throughout the day, that is stressful to the body. That can literally send someone into a panic attack. I used to have like crazy blood sugar swings, and I realized like if I ate something, I felt better. People know about being hungry and angry, but they would never connect like the panic attack or the constant anxiety with unstable blood sugar all throughout the day. Yeah. Another form of stress can be like spiritual stress, and probably all the stuff that you talk about, emotional stress, all of that's very obvious, but it could also be having a chronic low-grade infection in your body. So if you have parasite infections just under the surface, it's not causing life-threatening reactions every day, but it's like having 50 tabs open on your iPhone. It's just going to drain the battery. It's just going to steal your nutrients. They love things like minerals. They love your magnesium and your iron. So they just rob you of all of that good stuff. And another stress could be eating gluten and you are sensitive to it. That can be a stress. So I look at it from all different angles in the body. But yeah, if you have hormone problems, then you want to look at basically everything else before the actual hormone problem. If you think of an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, what you see and what you focus on are things like PMS, my periods are really heavy, my breasts quadruple in size before my period, I'm a complete bitch, my mood's like all over the place. Those are the things that we focus on, but that's the tip of the iceberg. What we want to look at is under the surface. These huge factors like your gut health is a huge one. Another way that gut affects hormones is through detoxification. So once we use a hormone like estrogen, it needs to be gotten rid of properly. If it's not, it actually becomes more like a toxin. It just recirculates. Our body doesn't need it once it's been used to build the uterine lining. It needs to get out of the system. It doesn't want to be lingering, hanging around, floating around, causing issues. So our body sends it to the liver packages it up, it gets sent to the bowels, and it should come out through our poo, basically. So if we are constipated, or some people have this bacterial overgrowth in the intestines that kind of get that estrogen parcel, that package, and sends it back into circulation. So imagine it like a nice little ribbon with a bow on it from the liver, gets sent to the bowels, ready to go. These bacteria get at it, open up the package, and allow the estrogen to recirculate. And then the final way that gut can affect hormones is through nutrient deficiencies. So if we have parasites and they're stealing our iron or our magnesium, or we have low stomach acid and we're not absorbing zinc or calcium properly, then we basically don't have the building blocks to make hormones properly. So we need nutrients to make hormones, use hormones, and get rid of hormones. That's a very energy and nutrient intensive process. It requires a ton of vitamins, minerals, amino acids from proteins, cholesterol from healthy fats. So if our diet's limited and we're not intaking enough because we're trying to be like super healthy, or we've restricted our diet so much that we're down to 10 foods, then we're not even going to get enough in. Or it's just that our absorption's off and we have bacterial imbalances and all of these other problems that often go together. Like if you have bacterial overgrowth, you're probably going to have leaky gut, you're probably going to have parasites. So it doesn't really matter what the exact problem is for a lot of people. Most people have a little bit of everything. But we also need to fix that problem so that we start absorbing our food better. When my gut was, there was a point where my gut was like really unhealthy, but I was eating a ton of organic food. Like everything I ate was organic, the best meat, the best veg in the world. I'd spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds every month on my food and my supplements. So it's a very expensive process, but I tested my nutrients and I was still depleted in literally every nutrient. I was like, this is ridiculous because I'm trying so hard. But at that point, I hadn't done any deep work on my gut. I was more just, oh, let me take this probiotic, or let me take this, let me do this restrictive diet and get some short-term relief, but not actually getting like long-term success.
Yeah. I find like the gut health stuff so fascinating because of the link with like trauma, stress, and mental health. And I've noticed a massive difference this year in like the most basic shit, like eating more protein and like eating protein, fiber, veg, like before eating like a refined carbohydrate or like a bit of chocolate or whatever it might be, and not going on that blood sugar roller coaster like you were saying. Like if and when I do that, I do notice like I might feel more anxiety. The irony is that in society, again, like we're conditioned as women to be like, oh, like you have a shit period, or like you have really bad period pains, or periods are shit, like go and eat loads of chocolate, like feel better.
Yeah.
And I've totally been on that like vicious cycle in the past where, yeah, like the food I'm eating is making me more anxious. But it's like, as soon as I realized that and learned about it, I couldn't unsee it, in the same way that like someone who starts doing meditation every morning, it's like before feeling stressed out in the morning was like they're normal. And then when they don't meditate, they're like, oh, now I feel stressed. oh wait, maybe I just always felt stressed before I started doing meditation.
Yeah, I see these like on TikTok, people, these like seemingly perfect boyfriends who go to the shops and there's one who like makes the girlfriend this like gift basket every month for her period.
Yeah.
And he puts like candles in there or like a DVD and a book. I'm like, that's cute. But then he puts in like Ben and Jerry's ice cream and like this huge galaxy bar of chocolate. I'm like, that's not actually going to help her. Or it might give her brain a little bit of a dopamine hit, but then she's probably going to have more pain in her cycle. It's just going to drag it out for longer. That's going to impact your next cycle because everything has a knock on effect too. So it's fine having some chocolate and a piece of cake every now and again, but you can do little things like you said, maybe go for a walk afterwards, or if you're doing a strength training session in the morning, can you time your little cupcake treat after that, just so your body can like use the sugars better? And someone once commented when I said some of this stuff, they're like, that's so disordered. I was like, it's not, because I'm doing this out of a place of compassion for my body, and my metabolism struggles a little bit more than maybe yours does, but I do these things. So if I went to a restaurant, I would make sure to have like I'd have the serving of vegetables, I'd eat the protein first, I'd eat the carbs afterwards, I'd go for a little walk afterwards, I'd try and get in a workout that day, not out of a place of trying to burn off the calories, and trying to support my body and be just smart with it, because I know what the impacts of that is. There's also this trend in the wellness world that I want to talk about with intuitive eating. In some ways it's like really beneficial, but in other ways, like that would have never served me early on in my health journey. Because if I was listening to my cravings, I would be eating sugar and stuff that my body was sensitive to all day, every day. I'd be like, oh, I want a cupcake now. Oh, I actually want this. And I was on such a blood sugar roller coaster, and I had such a candida yeast overgrowth in my body that they were the things that were craving the sugar, and it was actually making me worse. So now I can intuitively eat because I don't have them problems. But there's also like I don't know if it's like the ego or something, but sometimes I think I'll want something, but I'll eat like a steak and some potatoes first with some like butter and vegetables. And I'm like, I actually didn't want that. It was just like, I thought I was missing out on something. And my body was like maybe craving a little bit of a dopamine hit again. And what I actually needed was protein, or maybe to drink a glass of water, or maybe to like listen to my emotions in that moment. What am I actually needing? Not just reaching for the cupcake because that's what we're told to do when we're sad.
Yeah. And I've been on a whole journey with that I've like documented on the podcast on solo episodes, where like, oh, I've had a stressful day, or I've had a difficult situation in work or whatever. Oh, how convenient. All of a sudden, I fancy some chocolate. Or I fancy
any excuse.
Yeah, like for someone else, it might be, oh, I fancy a glass of wine or whatever it is. And I think it's like finding that happy medium again, isn't it? Where it's not about never having these things and being really strict and blah, blah, blah. But it's also like, is the decision coming from a place of love? And like, is it like, how I would describe it is like, is it a soul craving? Like, is it going to make your soul happy? Or is it like your fear and that survival response, that fight or flight, like anxiety brain just needing like something in that moment to know more, to feel better?
Yeah. If I'm at a restaurant now and they'll have a cheesecake on the menu, if I'm really in the mood for it and I've nourished my body with the other meals, and I choose to have it, sometimes I also just want 2 bites of it. Sometimes there'll be a point where I'll have like 2 bites and I'll feel like that's okay, like I'm good, I don't want any more, but I'll feel like I have to finish it, and it actually makes me feel worse on the other end, where I could have just like boxed it up, taken it away, or shared it with other people. But I think because the food is like addictive as well, that combination of sweet and fatty and salty, our primitive brains just see that as like, stock up now on as much food as you can, because food could disappear at any point, we're still in that very caveman brain, where we see these like bright colors, and like with Pringles, once you pop you can't stop. It does hit centers of our brain that leave us wanting more. But yeah, if there's a day that you really want that cheesecake dessert and you want to finish the whole thing, that's great. If you can support your body and do some of the things that I mentioned before and just enjoy it and like taste it and just be in the moment and be really present. Don't beat yourself up afterwards. You don't need to like skip the next meal just because you've eaten that. But also when you're doing that, listen to your body. And if after 2 bites you feel okay, then you don't have to eat the rest of it. I was like growing up, when I'd eat with my nan, she was like, never leave any food on your plate. And I was like full to the brim. So I just feel like there's some people that just really don't like food waste. So I'm one of them. But just with serving sizes and everything, you just need to listen to your body more. And I really struggle with that early on in my health journey, because I think we're taught to not listen, and we're taught to outsource our health to other people. And my intuition was very clouded and affected for so long because my brain just wasn't functioning properly. But now I've really noticed over the years, as I got physically healthier, my intuition and my spirituality and my like even things like witchiness and my dreams and my premonitions have started to come back online again. I lost a lot of my powers when I was really sick. So it's just really interesting to see, like, as you support your physical vessel, you can actually be more tapped in and more spiritual.
Love that. I feel like a really great place to start wrapping up is like some really practical next steps that are gonna help like most people listening. And I know if someone's listening and they're really struggling with their health on a daily and weekly basis, like they need to just come and work with you to find out the root cause. But for everyone, let's talk about some practical like things that you find are really beneficial for the majority of women. So let's start with like 3 to 5 things that are really like daily habits and almost like shifts that you've made in your day to day that have benefited your health the most
cool.
as a woman.
I have about 100, so
hormones, gut health, like
okay,
that kind of overall stuff.
Yeah, so I'd say my morning routine is a big one. So this is starting my day with how I mean it to go on. So if I start, I used to wake up with anxiety. Like as soon as I opened my eyes, my heart would be racing. And I didn't even have a stressful job or anything. This was purely physiological. So with anxiety, it can be something external, something that you're not coping with, or a relationship problem or anything. But mine was like the fact that I had parasites, severe magnesium deficiency. It was just taking over my body. But yeah, the morning routine is a big one. I start with like gratitude or journaling and switch it up, depends on how I'm feeling, meditation. But I think when you start your day in a calm way, it really makes a huge difference, especially to your digestion. So there's some people, and I used to be like this when I was studying, because it was just a whole day, like 9 till 6. I'd have to travel into Manchester, so that's like an extra hour with travel. And because I was on such a restricted diet at the time, I had to prep a ton of food. So I was up really early. I feel like the whole morning was just really stressed. And I would often be constipated that whole day just because I didn't have a relaxed, slow morning that I really needed. So I feel like starting your day in a calm way, whatever that is for you, but you can do things like visualization, EFT tapping, you can do meditation, you can do some journaling. But even if it's for 5 minutes, breath work, whatever, just starting a day on a calm note, I think that's really important. Next thing would be getting daylight into your eyes as soon as possible. So opening up your curtains, your blinds, and if you can, just stand, if you don't have an outdoor space, like just stand at your window as it's open for 5 minutes. Or if you do have a garden, can you go and like stand outside in your dressing gown, in your slippers, and just have the light come into your eyes? You don't want to directly stare at the sun, but that is so regulating to your hormone system, your body clock, your circadian rhythm, as it's called. So we as women are on a average 28-day cycle. So we're very influenced by the sun, the moon, the light, the dark. And that's why a lot of women tend to cycle, have the ovulation around a similar time, or have the period at a similar time of month. And it's because we're very influenced by that. So getting light first thing from the sun instead of our devices and our iPhone light directly glaring in our face, that blue light is very strong. And even if it's a winter's day and it doesn't look bright outside, that spectrum of light is still there. And it's the exact spectrum of light that you need at 7, 8 a.m. to trigger certain hormones. So if you have like mini light breaks throughout the day, because the light that's coming off your iPhone or your laptop is like the same, it's constant all throughout the day. It's probably like light at 2 p.m. So if you wake up and the light that you first get in your eyes, you scrolling on Instagram, it's kind of telling your brain it's the middle of the day. So you're going to be producing the wrong hormones. Certain ones aren't going to be activated, certain ones aren't going to be shut off. And if that carries on throughout the day, our cortisol, our stress hormones, should be lowering as the day goes on. It's normal for it to be high in the morning to get us out of bed, give us that energy to get up and go. But then as the day goes on, it should dwindle. But again, if you're looking at your phone till 10 o'clock at night, you've still got that bright light in your eyes that's telling your body it's daytime and to produce cortisol. This is where sleep issues come in, or just the quality of your sleep isn't going to be good. Because if you're waking up tired, that's a sign that your sleep's quality is bad. Even if you've been in bed for 10 hours, you need to wake up feeling refreshed. So getting light breaks throughout the day from the sun, just standing outside. If you have a phone call to make, can you go outside or just stand in your garden? Or if you work in an office, can you just go outside for 5 minutes for a little break? People who smoke, they can go outside. So can we just go out for a little light break instead of a cig break? Mm-hmm. And then I'd say with meals, the blood sugar balancing is really key. So what you said, protein, healthy carbs, healthy fats in there. But I think protein is one that people overlook a lot, and it really needs to be emphasized more, specifically animal protein. I'm not a fan of vegan diets. Vegetarian, it can be better because they can get sources from dairy and eggs, but I feel like vegan diets are problematic, and I do feel like they're dangerous because most people don't do them. They're not even planning them properly, and I do feel like there are nutrients in animal protein that you just cannot get from plants. Things like cholesterol, things like retinol, which is vitamin A. It's not the same as beta carotene from carrots. They're completely different. So I believe a healthy human body should have some animal protein with vegetables and with the plant proteins if you want them. But I do see a lot of people running into health issues, and I feel like it's going to be more obvious over the next few years.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
everyone's obsessed with like oat milk and plant-based stuff now.
Yeah. Please avoid the oat milk. I drink raw milk, so it's straight from the cow, and my health has never been better. I did have to come off dairy for ages because I was reacting to it, but now that I've healed my gut, my body loves dairy, and it actually clears my skin, whereas before it caused acne. And there's a big difference with quality. So I'd say buy the quality stuff, whatever you have access to, whatever you can afford. It's worth putting in that extra bit of money for the quality, because there's a big difference between like semi-skimmed Cravendale milk, the one that you can just get from the supermarket, versus a raw organic milk from a local farm. I feel like they're completely different foods. The raw milk is more like a living food. It has the probiotics, the enzymes in. It's how nature designed it. The pasteurization process just gets rid of all of that stuff, and that's what makes it more allergenic for a lot of people. It's like the body doesn't recognize it anymore. But yeah, I would much prefer someone doing cow's dairy, even if it's the lesser quality kind. I'd still rather that. I'd still rather someone eat non-organic chicken than the Beyond Meat burgers. I just don't even recognize that as food, and your body probably won't either. I'd say protein, you want to be aiming for probably minimum 100 grams a day, honestly, which might seem a lot, but with the people that I'm working with, they just feel so much better. It helps with muscle growth, which is one of the best things for regulating your metabolism, your longevity. Even as you get older, you need more muscle on your frame for protection against injuries and falls, and cognitive decline. A lot of people just feel way more satiated. Like if you're struggling with sugar cravings, if you just go and eat like a big serving of protein, like a big steak or some chicken thighs, then or like 3 eggs, I'm sure that craving is going to be gone. So just give that a go, especially at breakfast. If you're just eating 1 egg or 2 eggs and a piece of toast, then that's still not enough. You want to be aiming for about at least 30 grams of protein per meal. So you can do some like simple tracking. There's apps like MyFitnessPal these days that help you see if you are triggered by numbers and tracking, then that's fine. Just go off. Like each meal has a good serving of protein, whether that's chicken, turkey, beef, fish, eggs, seafood, dairy products, any of that stuff.
When I was starting to track my protein again, I started by just putting the actual protein number in my notes app in my iPhone. Because at the time I was like, I don't give a shit how many calories I'm eating. I just want to make sure I'm eating, like you were saying, 100. For me, it's like 100 to 120 grams. So that's a good tip for anyone listening if you don't want to be looking at calories.
And that goes up if you are if you're working out as well, your needs will increase even further. So I'd say absolute minimum, like if you're really petite, tiny, 5 foot, really slender, maybe 80 grams might be enough for you. But like for me, I'm 5'11", I am strength training like 3 to 5 times a week. I'm looking to build muscle and support my metabolism. So I'm like, some days it's like 150 grams of protein, honestly. Like calories, I feel like calories they're important. I think a myth in the holistic world as well is like calories don't matter. Well, they do, because at one point I was eating like 3,000 calories unknowingly, and it was all from like coconut oil. I was just putting butter and oil and olive oil and almond butter on everything that I was eating, and they do add up, but they're also not the only important thing. So there's these PTs online that say if you're not losing weight, it's because you're lying to yourself and you are eating more, you're cheating, you're doing something wrong, you must be getting extra calories from somewhere. But those people are often struggling with their thyroid, and calories in versus calories out doesn't apply to them because the hormone system is off. But it's not just calories don't matter all then. You can't just go the other way. They're important, but it's not the only thing that I'd consider. With clients, if the main thing working with me is weight loss, I'll happily support them if it is an actual problem and they're not just struggling with like body image issues, or they think that they should be the same weight as what they were when they were 15. I'll really help to unpack, is this really in alignment? Is this what you really want? Or is this something deeper? But I will happily help them with their weight loss goals, and we will do all of the foundational things. And often by not even focusing on the weight loss, it happens as a side benefit. So we work on the gut health, we work on the minerals, we check the thyroid first, and then the weight often just comes off effortlessly without even focusing. But there are some cases where that still doesn't work and we have to go deeper. Maybe we do have to like look at macros, or we do have to look at calories, but that's less common actually. But that's what people usually start with.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a way around it. It's by focusing on weight loss holistically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So morning routine, light on your eyeballs in the morning, preferably outside.
Yeah. Blood sugar balance, specifically like protein increase.
Fiber.
Then I'd say like movement is important, but that's another thing that doesn't mean the more the better, because exercise is another stress. So if you're already stressed, if you've had a completely crazy work week, there's stuff going on in your personal life, you've just recovered from a virus, and then you're trying to like kill it at the gym at 5 a.m, that workout probably isn't going to benefit you. I would rather you have an extra hour in bed, honestly, for that phase that you're in at the moment. Even around your menstrual cycle, you don't have to do the same thing every day with your workout. You can be more cyclical with it. You can listen to your body. If you've had a really bad night's sleep the night before, you don't have to do that same workout that you had planned, because it might actually backfire and you're probably just going to cause more stress. You might injure yourself if you're not listening to your body. But I actually I was going the other way, and I was like procrastinating and not going to the gym for a little bit because I was like, oh, I'm starting my period in like 12 days. So I'll just not push it. Or like I have an Oura ring, so I track my recovery and everything. And if it's like very slightly low, I was like, oh, I need to rest today.
Yeah.
So I had to do some mindset work, and I was like, no, I'm just being lazy. Let me actually tap in. And I actually did some like techniques on that. I think I did like a swish pattern technique where I saw myself going to the gym and felt how good I was going to feel. And since that, I've been like so motivated to go, and I just love working out now. So there is a nice fine line with that as well, where sometimes you just have to be real with yourself and listen to your intuition, but also know that we have this like little protective voice in our head that wants to keep us small and keep us a little bit lazy, a little bit safe. So we have to like push outside of our comfort zone sometimes.
Yeah. And even like weightlifting in the gym is a perfect example of how like every weightlifting session can be different. And I can do the same exercises, 3-4 days before I'm due on my period than I've done the week before. And it'll just be the case that the week before I might push myself more to add some more weight onto the barbell. A few days before my period, I'm not pushing myself to do that. I'm not saying, oh, you need to hit a fucking PB or whatever that week. So this, even like within your workouts, it can be more gentle, can't it? Like, you don't
compared to what I used to do, it feels like I'm doing nothing now. Like when I go to the gym now, I can be in like half an hour. I'm not sweaty at all, but I've like worked my muscles. Whereas before, I would be in minimum 1 hour. I'd have to be red faced, sweating, absolutely exhausted for it to be considered a workout, which is just like crazy to me now. I hardly ever do workouts like that anymore, and I'm fitter than I've ever been.
Yeah, love that.
So I'd say the movement, even with some of my clients, I'd rather them just go for a walk outside, because then they're regulating the nervous system. Walking is still like an amazing workout as well. You're getting the sunlight, the fresh air. Bonus points if you can do it without headphones or listening to anything and just clear your head at the same time. Or even like lower impact things like Pilates. Like I'm a huge fan of that now. Some people, yoga is a good starting point because that combines the spirituality, the mindfulness practice at the same time. So I'd say movement is a big one. Try and move your body every day in some way, but also listen to what you're enjoying and what feels good. And you don't be afraid of switching it up. You don't have to stick to this like rigid plan every day. And then the final one I'd say is about environmental toxins, and just be mindful of not only what you're eating, but what you're using on your body and in your homes. Because a lot of these chemicals found in skincare products, deodorants, pesticides from non-organic food, the hormone disruptors, they're called endocrine disruptors, and they are microscopic, so we can't see them, but they enter in through our skin or through our food, and they interfere with our hormones. So sometimes they can block hormones, or sometimes they can proliferate and stimulate hormones. So this is part of the reason that conditions like infertility are on the rise, is because this is happening like at such a tiny level, but it affects us systemically. So some of these ingredients might have even been studied in isolation, but they've not been studied when combined with 50 other ingredients in the same product. And so they'll say, this is fine, this doesn't cause cancer. They might have studied it for 5 years, but who knows what's going to happen after 50 years of exposure combined, and when it has this synergistic effect with all of these other toxic ingredients. So some of them are man-made, some of them are natural. With my history and the mold exposure, that is considered a toxin, and yes, it is natural, but it was unnatural with the fact that there'd been water damage in the home, and that level of mold should not have been in my living space, and it was completely invisible. It was under the floor of the house, under the crawl space. A pipe had burst, hadn't been dealt with properly. We kind of forgot about it, and then everyone in the house started to get sick in their own ways. So these sneaky little things, this is why I'm a huge fan of air filters in the home. Even if you don't think you have a problem, you want to be preventative, and you just want to do everything that you can to avoid that. So it cleans the air of all different things, like pollen even. So if you struggle with allergies, hay fever, and just everyday pollutants that's in the air. They've done studies now, even with indoor air being more toxic than outdoor air because of our furniture and off-gassing and our
I found
mattresses.
that
Yeah.
fascinating when you said that, because we live on a main road, so I'm like, I would have kept our windows shut like during rush hour, thinking, oh, there's pollution coming in. But now, like, after following you, I'm like, every morning, every single window in the house,
Yeah,
like,
you can
open straight
you
away,
can time it. So maybe
even
at
in
rush hour
autumn,
you keep them
winter.
closed, but the rest of the day when it's a bit
Yeah.
quieter, just let the air circulate, let the air flow. Yeah, it's down to things like even modern day buildings, how they're designed, the lack of airflow, how they're so energy efficient. They're just keeping everything tightly, and the buildings can't breathe properly like they used to be able to. So that, yeah, that's just opened my eyes to like a building expert now after everything that I've had to learn. But I'm definitely not. And yeah, just things like water filters. We were talking about that when you came to mind. Like, water filters are a huge thing as well. We should be drinking ideally liters of water, like 2-3 liters of water a day. So if you're drinking water that's got fluoride in or chlorine, or residue from medication, so those things don't get filtered out. So all the women in the UK on birth control pills or antidepressants, they're urinating into the toilet. That water gets cleaned up as well as it can, but it doesn't filter out medications. So we're having trace amounts of those things every single day. So I feel like the foundations of health are clean air, clean food, and clean water. And if you can clean those up as best as you can, you're going to be pretty good. But it takes time. I don't expect people to completely detox the house and throw everything out and buy fresh. It will take time. It'll just be next time you need a new deodorant, can you buy one that's not got aluminium in there that's going to clog your pores up and add this like fragrance into the body that is code word for chemical, basically. The word fragrance, unless it says from a natural source, is code word for over 3,000 different things that it could be. Yeah. So it's a pretty scary world, and it is worse in other countries. Like America compared to the UK is really bad for regulations. UK is a little bit better, but still not enough, I don't think.
Yeah. You've just answered my last question, which was going to be like, do you recommend like small swaps, like one thing at a time?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on someone's personality. Some people like, I'm an all or nothing person. Let's just do it. Let me just donate everything to like a food bank or a charity. And I'm like, go for it. Because I really don't like waste. So I don't want people being wasteful and just getting rid of everything in the bin. But some people are just like, I've been sick for so long, let me just do everything that you're saying, and they'll stick to it to a T. Whereas other people, they need like little small swaps.
Yeah. I feel like I've worked really hard on like food, but done nothing with like products, like skincare, all that kind of stuff. So
and some things like if you're washing your shampoo out after 10 seconds, that's less important than a moisturizer that you're slapping all over your body,
or
and
like
that's soaking into your skin.
Whatever.
So you can just like pick your battles. Like for me, I'll still wear like a brow pencil, brow gel that's like glossier. It's completely conventional, but it's because it works, and I've not found a more natural one that is better. But the rest of my makeup is pretty like clean, non-toxic. So if you've got one product that you absolutely love, then don't feel like you're doing something wrong. Like, just clean up all the other stuff. And it's about your overall toxic load, your toxic bucket. Like sometimes I'll get a lash lift, I'll get my eyelashes done, and like that's not the most natural thing in the world, but I do so many other positive things that it's kind of like all balances out. And I don't want to be this perfectionist person, because I've been at the point where I've been so restricted, and it's so depressing and made me so unhappy that now I can tolerate these things. I just want to live, and I'll have a few drinks every now and again, and I'll enjoy it. I'll feel good. I won't want to like purposely get drunk anymore, because that just makes me feel bad, and I don't want to do that to my body. But it doesn't have to be that I don't ever drink alcohol again. Like there's a middle ground that I like to live in.
Yeah, love that. Amazing. Thank you so much for
You're
sharing.
welcome. Thanks for having me.
And I feel like my philosophy and approach is like one thing, nail that thing, then add in another thing. So I just think if anyone listening is like, oh my God, there's so many things that I want to do, there's so many things I've picked up, my recommendation would be re-listen to this and maybe jot down in your Apple Notes app or Android equivalent what like has jumped out to you that you want to change, and then one thing at a time.
Yeah,
You know, one
tick that
step
off,
at a
box that
time.
off, and then on to the next.
Yeah, love
I'd
that.
agree.
Vivian, please will you share how people can find you, how they can work with you at the moment? This podcast is probably going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Mhm.
So if I know you've got a group program coming up, and then you've also obviously got one-to-one work. So let us know more info, next steps.
Yeah. So my website is vivanaturalhealth.co.uk. So that's VIVA Natural Health. Same with Instagram at Viva Natural Health, Facebook, TikTok, if you're on there. And I have a podcast, so Kat's going to be on the podcast. I'm not sure if it's going to be out this month, so just keep an eye open. That's called Hormones in Harmony. So I talk about all of these subjects in just way more detail. So morning routines and stress management and movement and the protein side of things. If you want a deeper dive into all of these things I've touched on today, then you can listen to the podcast. I've got years of episodes on there. I think we're up to like almost 200, which is crazy. And working with me. So yeah, there's going to be a group program. And yeah, if the space is available, I would love to have you on there. And then for one-to-one work, that is my root cause relief package. That'll be us working together closely for 6 months, which is a really good amount of time. The group is 6 weeks. This is 6 months. So it depends on, do you just want to like step your toes in, or do you want you've done all of the other groups and you just want that personalized support and the lab tests, then the root cause relief package is going to be the go-to. So I can send you the links, Kat, and you can put them in the show notes and people can just click if they're interested.
Yes, amazing. I will do. And I'll be sure to share my episode when it comes out on yours as well.
Oh yeah, we can definitely do that. Same.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm already like, right, you need to come for a part 2 because I feel like I've asked questions that I want other people to know, and I'm like, but
I still have
what
more.
about this? So maybe we need to do a part 2, but
absolutely.
all of my questions.
Yep. Just directly for you.
Yeah.
So you probably not even air it, just your own little consultation. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate you.
Come on in whenever you wish.
Thank you.
I'll be the resident nutritionist.
Yeah, I love it. And thank you, ladies, so much for listening. Please tag us in your stories, like screenshot your podcast app, all of that good stuff. Let us know you found this helpful, maybe eye-opening, mind-blowing, like you've picked up some tips. And keep in touch with me as well. Like if you have any, you might make a change from this episode and in a month's time you're like, oh my God, that podcast, I did this and it made such a difference. Please share, like, and I'll definitely pass on to Vivian like any wins, any like takeaways from this.
I would love that.
Yeah. And thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kat.
Bye.
Bye. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would love for you to leave me a rating and review on your podcast app, as this helps to support the show and it allows it to reach more people with this valuable information. Come and say hi over on Instagram. I'm at Viva Natural Health. And if you haven't already, check out my website, vivanaturalhealth.co.uk, for tons more free resources and to discover how I could support you further. I currently offer one-on-one consultation packages if you want my top level support, then more affordable group programs and self-paced online courses. So there really is something for everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode.